It's a fighting game with dinosaurs.
Collectors want the original. Dad, can you beat this level for me?
Because they're afraid of tampering by the Yakuza.
They can't drive over the curb. What the hell?
Because they don't let you get so drunk at Chuck E. Cheese.
Like, you have left dry dock. What?
I just spent $200 for a toaster. I lit a cigar, and I had a beer.
Gore, I heard you cried when you play Earthbound. Welcome to the show. I am that Chris Gore. This is PodCRASH. This is the show where you get to hear me each week as a guest on a different podcast. You get to discover new shows. I get to talk about a variety of topics. I'm actually, right now, I'm in Pasadena, California at Interact DVD, my favorite used DVD store, and one of the last in the country, actually. And they're having a going out of business sale. So this is very sad for me because I've been coming to this store for more than 10 years. And I'm sitting here with... Well, I'm not sitting here with Dave Sparks, but I can see him. He's in my eye line as the store is crowded because, why? Because they're having a huge sale, which is part of the reason I'm here. It's also I think the last day that they're buying DVDs, it might be tomorrow. Tomorrow they're still buying DVDs to sell, but the store will be open till November 30th, and you can come to Interact DVD. What is it? November 25th is the last day. November 25th is the last day, and Interact is, you can find them interactcd.com on the internet. You can also go to 350 South Lake Avenue in Pasadena, California, and give them a call at 626-578-7282. I know that sounds like a long plug, but it really is kind of emotional for me to be standing here recording what will probably be my last podcast from Interact. I've recorded, this is now my third one, recording in the store, but there's a flurry of activity here as people are snatching up DVDs at deep discounts, and I think they'll go deeper as we get closer to the 25th, right, Dave? Yes, much deeper discounts. So get your cheap Blu-rays here at Interact. I'm also crashing a show today, as I always do in every episode of the show. This week, Gameroom Junkies, which is a really cool podcast all about video games and mostly like stand-up arcade machines. It's hosted by Preston Burt and Patrick Wall, and I recorded this actually at DragonCon back in September. And oddly enough, I met this comedian there. This guy, Shane Mackey, he and I became like fast buddies. I don't know what it was. We were just like hanging out at DragonCon, started talking, realized like he's a stand-up comic in Atlanta. I've been dabbling in the stand-up comedy for the last several years. He and I completely bonded, and I just invited him to be on the podcast with me. And these guys, Preston and Patrick, they are hardcore video game collectors. And it's mostly the old school kind of arcade game machines and pinball machines. And what they do is they're kind of like, you know, like those TV shows, those reality shows where they actually flip houses, and they'll buy a house and flip it and make some money. These guys actually buy like old cabinets and they restore them and then they sell them online. And they also, each of them have like really extensive game rooms. I don't have a game room, but I do have, I like to collect old game systems myself, and I've got a whole bunch of them. I should even mention, actually, Interact, they also sell video games. They've got Wii, PS3, and Xbox games also for sale here, also at deep discount prices. I'm going to keep throwing that, Dave, I'm going to keep throwing the plug in. I'm going to keep throwing the plug in during this entire intro. But we'll be talking about everything games, from arcade machines to Xbox to all of that, and especially the cabinet stuff. I own one cabinet. I have a Primal Rage machine, and I'll talk about that on the show. Let's get to a couple of things. First of all, I am a big gamer. And if you listen, one of the advantages you listen to this show, I do reveal a lot of things about my personal life. I'm a gamer to the point where there were times, and this actually involved Interact, because I came to this store and I would buy games like X-Wing and TIE Fighter and B-Wing and all of the different mission packs, you know, for all the X-Wing games. I was obsessed with those flight sim games. I mean, they were amazing. And it was one of those things where it really became, after a while, kind of an addiction, where I'd be like, well, I'll just play this one level and see what it's like. Suddenly my whole day would just disappear from me. So I do have to temper my gaming, and I am not I don't game on PC. I game on console systems now. And so I am a big console gamer because I kind of feel like I can just get in and get out. But Interact was where I purchased all of those different variations on X-Wing and TIE Fighter and whatnot. I thought they were great. They were great games. But always been a big gamer. And if you listen to the show, here's what I'm going to tell. I'm going to give you my gamer tag on Xbox. On Xbox Live, I am that Chris Gore. It's kind of obvious. I have several accounts. I'm that Chris Gore. I'm also Gbone77. That's Gbone 77. That's my main account. And then I have another account that I use when friends come over, which is Iron Knee. That's Iron and Knee. So try to friend one of those. I know that like Xbox, I think they still have a limit on the number of friends that you can have. I think it's like 100. You can only have 100 friends. So, don't be upset if I don't approve your friend request. It's just because they limit me, and I have to constantly kick people out if I'm going to get a new friend in. I'm sorry. I have to do, and I have not picked up Halo 4 yet. I plan to before the end of the year, but I'm a little concerned about my financial situation now that I'm aware that I'm going to be unemployed come December 31st. You probably, if you're on the internet, you know that the show that I'm on a regular basis, Attack of the Show, is being canceled by G4 TV. And look, I have comments to say about that, which I think will surprise you, but I'm not going to address that right now. Right now, I want to focus on the positive, which is Interact Store is having a huge sale. If I didn't mention it earlier, it's this going out of business sale, which you should come to. But I will be addressing that on my Train Wrecks of 2012 episode of PodCRASH, which is going to come out before the end of the year. That is going to be a big episode. We might have to make it a 2-part episode because there were a lot of train wrecks. But I will address my thoughts about G4 and Attack of the Show and all that then. I'm mentioning it because I don't want you to think that I'm avoiding it. It's just that I want to save all of my thoughts for when I feel it's appropriate. Right now, I'm focused on seeing what DVDs I can afford, and I'm considering a purchase of Halo 4, but I'm also considering my financial situation, which I'll just say this podcast. The only plugs and ads you hear are for things that I'm involved with, and I don't pay myself for those plugs. And these stand-up gigs, though they're fun, rarely do you even get a free beer. Although I don't need your money, Dave. I appreciate the thoughts. He's handing me $1. Although actually, now that I think about it, I could probably use the $1 or maybe a balls. Dave sells these balls. Balls, it's BAWLS, one of my favorite. Why am I giving this plug? There's too many plugs. Let's get to the show. All right, Gameroom Junkies. I was on this show, as I pointed out. Recorded it at DragonCon in September. And it was an awesome time just talking about just obsession with game systems, with Preston and Patrick. And these guys are hardcore. A lot of fun to be on that show. And this guy, Shane Mackey, he and I just become buds. I think we're going to do stand-up together next year at DragonCon. We're going to try and put together some sort of the Nerds of Comedy or the Geeks of Comedy or something like that. Some comedy show that'll be nerdy comedy. So let's get right to it. Gameroom Junkies, here it is. Preston, Patrick, and my buddy Shane Mackey talking gaming.
I know we have our games in our basement, so, quick 5-minute game, just reset after work. It's great.
Yeah, no, it's definitely how I relax. Although the worst part is the worst thing to relax before you're going to bed. You know what I mean? Like relaxing. I like to relax with a video game to forget, some horrible part of my day. But as right before going to sleep, it's like, oh no, I'm seeing shapes. I'm seeing shapes in my eyelids.
You keep second guessing yourself, playing the game all through your dreams. You just can't stop.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
When I was 8, I saw Space Invaders in my eyes every night when I went to bed. That's the worst thing to go to bed to.
So you brought up a really old game, a classic, an iconic game.
I still have my 2600. I do still have my 2600.
Space Invaders is one of the ones that really kicked it off. So what we usually do with our guests is kind of take it back, because obviously arcades aren't nearly as prevalent as they were. Right. And so growing up during the golden age of arcades, do you have any cool memories of maybe your first game or some arcade shenanigans?
How I lost my arcade virginity. Yes. And what's so funny you brought that up. Yeah, I did grow up during the golden age of arcades, and when you would go and it'd feel kind of dangerous. You go in there and it's like, this is before they had the FBI warning or the don't do drugs, kids. That's when I played games before that warning. But no, I just remember being fascinated because it just tied into all of my interests, which were science fiction. and fantasy and all that, and being able to see that, and just, it's so funny now thinking like being impressed with like, there's a Star Wars arcade game, but I think Asteroids is the first one I remember, and then I really remember getting into Galaga and Zaxxon, and that like, you know, I don't know if that's my imitation of Galaga. But like that would just be so frustrating. That game, just I can't believe how many quarters I gave. I could have bought the machine, and I think we all could during that time. But and then there was stuff like Dragon's Lair. I remember when Dragon's Lair came out.
Oh yeah,
that was cool for its time. It was like, whoa, it's full motion graphics,
but so hard.
Yes, exactly.
Hard.
Timing of that. I remember when it came out for Sega CD, and being excited, just as hard, just as frustrating. But yeah, growing up at that time, it was just a way to like take something that, oddly enough, stuff I would see in the movies, like, oh wow, now there is a Star Trek game, and it was so unsophisticated then. It's almost embarrassing to point that out.
I only have a few games that I was really good at, mostly because I was very spent sparingly with my money, you know? Like, Dragon's Lair was a quarter eater, so I'd try it a couple times and be like, oh my god, this sucks, because I keep on losing. I only have $2 to last me half an hour, so I would only play the games I was good at, like Bad Dudes and Galaga. I have like my go-to games. Do you have a go-to game that you're like really good at?
I would say shooters, and Centipede is one of my go-tos, especially if you can play it with the trackball. Like, oh man, I love it. It's like, and then when you get to know like certain patterns, you know, like they did in King of Kong, you know, that, I mean, Steve Wiebe and those guys, they know the patterns, and it's just boop, boop, boop. It becomes muscle memory then.
Yeah.
And there was the games that I loved, not quite an arcade game, but a way to bring the arcade home before game systems got really sophisticated, were the Mattel Electronics games. Oh. I could play the auto race one where I knew, boop, 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 wait here, wait, I'm moving my thumb this way, that way, this way, that way, and I would know the pattern, I would memorize it, and then of course they had the football, then they had football 2, and what was there? The submarine one, there was the basketball one, and there was they had hockey, and they also had baseball, of course. And now, of course, they've re-released those, but this was after I had rebought all of them on eBay. Did you ever used to play those? I mean, those.
I didn't like the little handheld, but you're talking about arcade games. The sequel games I liked better. I like Donkey Kong Jr. better than the first one. I like Miss Pac-Man better because she was clearly a girl who could eat constantly and never get fat.
She's a hero to women everywhere. Okay, now when it comes to video game sequels, I think video game sequels are actually better for the most part, than movie sequels. Movie sequels, sometimes it can be diminishing returns. When it comes to video game sequels, I feel like they tend to get better because there's always going to be some sort of flaw in the gameplay, and I feel that video game sequels are better than movie sequels have turned out. I don't know. Is there debate about this? I think this would actually be a good debate question on some sort of, if we were going to have a nerd off about this, I think movie sequels versus video game sequels would be a great discussion. But I feel for the most part, video game sequels tend to be better. They tend to be better. And look, I have not played Halo 4 yet. I really cannot wait. Everything I've seen of it in terms of footage just makes me want to purchase it. In fact, I came to Interact during their going out of business sale here at 350 South Lake Avenue in Pasadena. I came here specifically looking for a copy of Halo 4. There is not one here. There could be one in the store if no one's going to sell that game used. What am I thinking? They're not going to sell that. If one comes in, Amber, would you hook me up?
Okay, fine.
Oh, okay. You're gonna save it for yourself.
I need a copy too, but
she needs a copy. Okay. You know what? You need a copy. I'll get the second copy.
Okay, I'll let you know.
Amber works at the store, and her hair this month is colored grape. All right, back to Game Room Junkies.
Yeah, another one that was really good, Street Fighter 2.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
people almost forget that there was a Street Fighter 1 because 2 just changed it so much and just opened the market completely.
And here's what's amazing about that is they didn't immediately do Street Fighter 3. They were so smart, they said, well, we're not going to do a sequel that's going to be called 3. We'll just make a sequel to the sequel, and we'll call it Super Street Fighter.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, Super Street Fighter 2. And then what we'll do is we'll make a sequel to that called Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
Yeah, and then Championship Edition.
Right,
and
exactly.
Here's a new guy, and that's it.
Oh, I remember.
After the 8th Street Fighter 2, the rules of math clearly off the table.
Yeah, exactly. But it's funny that comes up because that was around the time I actually was the editor of a video game magazine. I was doing this magazine called Film Threat, and for a company called LFP, and I would go and hang out with the guys playing video games. So we'd hang out, and I would beat them at Street Fighter 2. and eventually Super Street Fighter 2. And the big talk around there was like, oh, like when are they ever going to come out with 3, which came out so much longer later. I think people didn't care. But I was so good at playing it, the guy who ran the company was like, do you want to be the editor of this video game magazine, Video Games and Computer Entertainment? So I became the editor like in the mid-90s and kind of revamped the magazine. I split it off into a magazine called Computer Player, which was all about PC gaming, which was more adult skewed. And then video games we took, and that was just more for kids. So the way I got that job was by playing video games and beating members of the staff.
Kicking ass and taking names.
Yeah. I was really good at They had a Neo Geo machine there, and I played, what was that game? It was World, what was the fighting game that SNK on the Neo, it was the Neo Geo.
Art of Fighting?
Art of Fighting.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Art of Fighting, that was it. Yeah, oh my God, I was so good at Art of Fighting, and they also had a soccer game that I was addicted to. So, yeah, like that's how I got that job, which I worked for several years.
Well, I didn't get
that, Mom.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mom.
I know.
Yeah, I didn't get a job from playing Street Fighter 2, but that was the one game that I could be, a 12-year-old kid and look up to these guys playing college, and I just put my quarter on the ledge there and drop a quarter in and just totally kick their ass. And it feels good.
Show up in a poncho, sombrero, you gotta go clean up the town, the old Western.
Exactly.
Now, what about pinball machines? You guys ever play any pinball?
I do, but it's one of those things where I'm so ADD. Look at the monkey. It's like I love it, and then I feel like I'm pounding on it doesn't make it better. And you can, of course, tilt it, which doesn't help you. So I don't play it, but do I love it as an art piece? Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, some of the machines I've seen, Tron. A friend of mine has a Tron pinball machine.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
Preston's got
I got
one.
one.
oh, you do as well?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, well, what do you think? I mean, wow.
What do I think? It's awesome.
Much respect, man.
It's the best pinball I've ever played, I think.
But
Yeah,
also, what's great about Tron is Tron was the thing that kind of made video games like mainstream. Because if you remember, I mean, I'm talking about the original Tron, not Odyssey, which I didn't love.
Meh.
I love that took a guy who invented games and then anthropomorphized it in kind of a Wizard of Oz way. And you could look on that movie two ways. You could look on it as like that really happened. He was really in there. Or you could look on it as it was just a dream and he solved all his problems in his head, in his subconscious. So I love that you can look at that movie two different ways and walk away from it differently. And Tron changed a lot. It really mainstreamed it. And what's funny is my dad worked in computers. And actually, this is my first memory of playing a game. I played a text-based Star Trek game at his work. And I must have been like 7, 8 years old, and he would bring home punch cards. This is how long
gosh.
ago.
Wow.
That I could draw on because they were going to throw them away.
Right.
I don't think this is before recycling. And he had to go to work on a Saturday, and I'm sitting here playing it like, you have left dry dock. What? You have encountered a Klingon. What? But it's just text. So, but from that to the thing my dad was so excited about when Tron came out is it popularized computer terms that nobody knew, like RAM and byte and like all that stuff, programs, like those were not common terms. They're common terms now.
Right.
And I think the Tron Legacy really missed an opportunity by not, taking advantage of the, everybody knows, computer and video game terms. We know what pirating something is. We know they could have taken advantage of that, but
It wasn't nearly as ubiquitous back then.
You got to tell us the story of your Tron machine.
Oh, my Tron machine?
Yes. Everyone's got a story about how they acquired it.
So I think we brought it up because I have the Tron pinball machine.
Right, the Tron pinball, yeah.
But I also have Tron Arcade, too.
Because you are a true
Game Room
fan.
Junkie, man.
Yeah.
So let's see. The Tron pinball, they make those brand new. So basically, I got that from... So, we're hobbyists. So what we do is we look for the deals, look for broken games. We fix them up. And then some of them we keep, some of them we sell. So basically, I just saved all my money from flipping games and bought a Tron Legacy brand new in box, man. It delivered to my house.
This is a legacy pinball.
Yeah, Tron Legacy.
I haven't seen those yet. I haven't seen that.
Oh, yeah.
game.
Do you own any arcade games?
I do own some arcade games. I actually have a stand-up arcade machine for Primal Rage.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yes, I know. It is a fighting game, but it's a fighting game with dinosaurs. And the cool thing is that came out like right around the Jurassic Park craze.
Uh-huh.
And, I've got young kids. They love dinosaurs. So I have still kept it. Like, I got it when they were young. And it was when I was editing the video game magazine, I became friends with a guy at, one of the companies. He's like, well, do you want one? I'll give it to you. And I'm like, let me think for a second. Do I want an arcade machine? Yes. So it's sitting in my garage, and it's one of those things where it's just like, yeah, we got to plug that in. I'll play with my son. And what's cool about that game, and this was one of the first arcade games to do stuff like this, it has Easter eggs.
Oh, another thing it has
Easter eggs
that I remember is, doesn't it have a blood setting?
It has a blood setting, and it also, the Easter eggs are cool. You play human volleyball is one of the Easter eggs, and you eat the people. So, but it's cool too because I also got this Primal Rage. I have the Primal Rage action figures, and I have like this metal Primal Rage statuette. All of this would sell on eBay for nearly nothing. Okay, I mentioned that I do own a stand-up arcade machine. I have a Primal Rage machine, which is a lot of fun. It feels kind of 16-bit at this point, but I know that like somebody said I could rip open the cabinet and actually put some other game in there. I might consider doing that at some point. But if I were to have one arcade machine, the one that I would love most would be a Star Wars one, the original Star Wars arcade machine, the one that you sit in. Now, a buddy of mine, Dennis Priswera, actually has that machine in his house, and I think he might be, if he moves in with his girlfriend, I'm going to hit him up to get that machine from him. I need that Star Wars arcade machine. All right, back to Gameroom Junkies. Although it's weird, I got in a whole run where I was collecting. Please forgive me. I was collecting slot machines from Japan. You could get from this one company. In fact, the CEO of the company called me to ask me, why are you buying so many of these? It's like, I want to have a Vegas party in my garage. That's why. I want to make a kiosk that's right out of Vegas. So I bought 8 of these stand-up arcade machines. This is funny. They're from Japan, and they use these coins that are basically, they're like quarters. And it's funny is the designs of them were so bizarre. It was like, stuff where it's like, that sort of English where stuff was kind of off. Mm-hmm. And I bought one, and I got it for $50. And I'm like, $50, but it cost $150 to ship it. So at the time, I was making some money, and I thought, well, I'm gonna make my own Vegas kiosk in my garage. I'm a Vegas party, and so I did that, and I made there's sort of 3 back to back, and then 1 on each end cap, for a total of 8 machines. And then I had a party at my house, and whoever won the most tokens, they got to take a machine home. Wow. It was like a thank you party for people who worked for my company at the time, which was Film Threat, and it was a blast. It was like a fun party. But you can get like those machines. What's funny is those Japanese ones, they retire them. Mm-hmm. Because they're afraid of tampering by the Yakuza, and I'm serious.
Yeah.
After 6 months, no matter what condition the machine is in, they take it off the shelf. And the Japanese, I've only been on one trip to Japan. They're anal. It's like everything. I remember I went on this one trip to Japan. I went to the Shoshinkai show for Nintendo, and the Japanese, they're used games that they keep like everything, the warranty card and this and everything is in perfect condition. They're great at preserving stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways. Dumb aside story. So
they murder these machines. What do they do with them?
No, I don't know. They're just afraid of people tampering them with. But I just actually purged. You guys are going to hate me for this. A whole bunch of my classic game systems. I got rid of. There's a place called Game Dude in just outside of Los Angeles. I'm a frequent shopper there, and if you want any classic arcade game system, not stand up, mm-hmm. You can find everything there. But I unloaded my. I still have my Odyssey 2. That's the one thing I held on to because it has a keyboard.
I think I don't own it, but I don't think I'd ever be able to let go of a Vectrex. You ever played a Vectrex?
I have played a Vectrex, and I would not have gotten rid of that. I did get rid of my Fairchild system, which no one remembers that one.
No.
My dad had a Fairchild. It was like Sears' answer to the Atari 2600. And so I had a Fairchild system. I had the Odyssey 1. I kept the Odyssey 2. I got rid of my Jaguar CD and my Atari Jaguar, which I love that game Cybermorph. And I love the aftermarket stuff for the Jaguar, because Jaguar had that thing in television too, where you'd slide the different controller in there, mm-hmm. the little faceplate, and people were making custom ones of those.
So
I'm sorry, I'm trying to impress you by talking too much and telling you all this stuff.
Did you trade it for cash, or did you trade it for another game? Did you get something good?
You know what? I was actually just trying to make space in my garage. I think I got some cash, and then I got that Tron controller. Actually.
Good, yeah.
So I was like, well, I got the Tron controller and some cash I could use. But really, it was a matter of I feel like I am a collector, which is basically a hoarder where things are much more organized.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I still have my 2600.
Bravo.
Yeah, which is a little water damaged, but it still works. I tried to plug in my Genesis 2 months ago.
The original Sega Genesis?
My original Sega Genesis, because I wanted to play Road Rash 2 again. Again, another sequel game.
Yeah?
And it's dead. It won't do anything, so...
But you can get those, like the Sega Genesis, can't you get one of those boxes that have, like... 20 Sega Genesis games, but it's a box that looks like a Sega Genesis, but it's like this size. Like
or a controller that looks like an N64 controller that plugs right into your TV.
But, you just talked
Christmas
about
at the
being
mall.
collectors. Collectors want the original.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like, there's stuff I've held on to, like my old Mattel Electronics games. I still have a bunch of those, just because I have fond memories of playing those as a kid. Those were really my first bring home games that I brought home, and then I got the Odyssey 2. Everybody else got the Atari 2600. But the one thing is, I remember picking up at a yard sale as a kid the Odyssey 1. Do you guys remember this? Where they didn't what it was it was a black and white game system, but you would actually physically take a transparency and tape it to the front of your TV. And for each of them, they had 2 different sizes of this sort of cellophane that was like tennis, basketball, but all it was every variation of dots moving. That's all it was. Those were the first, play-at-home systems.
Sounds like Pong. You just bought Pong.
You're basically playing versions of Pong, which Pong, to this day, I mean, it's, I still have just the Pong, like the, you bring it home Pong thing, and the home Pong. I love it. I mean, it's just like, so boom, boom. I have an old black and white TV that I just sort of keep it on. It's like this setup in the corner. I'll pop it on, and like, what's great is I'll put it on and just have it where the ball's going back and forth, and just leave it on as like a screensaver in my garage. It's good ambient light.
I think also Home Pong, I think, is the name of the guy you bought all those Japanese slot machines from.
Yes, Home Pong. That's that guy's name. In Tokyo. Home Pong.
Do you still have those?
I don't. I got rid of all my slot machines except for 2. I have two that are Halloween themed. But this company was in Texas, and they would bring them over by boat, and it cost more to ship them than it did to buy them. So
most an opium drug mule.
Yeah, there was something. They were bringing something else over on those. Just like in the dark, in the original Batman film, Batman Begins. Where are the drugs? What are they doing with the drugs? Smuggling over in these little toys.
You brought up Batman, and I know that you were a Batman nut.
Yes,
which involves a lot of memorabilia, a lot of collections, and part of having a game room is decking it out and showing off your collection. What are some of your prime things that decorate your space that are just so integral to making it?
I'll tell you 3 that stand out. I have a faux bronze statuette of William Shakespeare. That when you pull it back this way, it has a switch. Now, the switch is connected to a power strip, so you can turn on anything with this.
Oh, that's
right out of the 60s Batman. And then I actually took a red phone, an old red rotary phone. I popped out the rotary part. I put a blinking light on it, and I put a cake glass on it from Target right next to that. Yes. And then on my wall, I've got a big Dark Knight, like Batman logo that was like, it's made of fiberglass. That I'm going to paint up someday. But yeah, that's part of my setup. But Batman, I remember the Sega CD Batman. There was the Batman, what was it, the Batman Returns game for Sega Genesis. I remember really liking. It was pretty much a beat 'em up, side scroller beat 'em up, not much to it.
Yeah.
And wasn't there some levels with the Batmobile? But Batman, I can't think of what's been other than the recent Arkham games. That's totally a transformed. But the early Batman games were not so great.
Yeah, side scroller beat 'em ups.
No.
Yeah, nothing to speak of there. But
I have a question for you guys, if you wouldn't mind my asking.
Yeah, go ahead.
For everyone here, have you ever played a video game? Because I think video games they're connected to our childhood. They're connected to emotional experiences with friends, experiences with mind-altering substances. I mean, it's just. Have you ever had a video game have such an emotional impact that you cried or got emotional?
I came close. So there was a game that I used to play when I was a kid in a bowling alley on this bowling league when I was in middle school. It's called Star Castle. I don't know if you guys remember that. It was a vector-based game and no joysticks, all buttons. Wonderful game. And when I finally found one of those, I almost cried. Just because it brought back so many good memories of, childhood and all that stuff. But I got emotional and I was embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Well, you brought it up. We talked about it earlier. Street Fighter 2, for me, I didn't cry, but that was the game that I remember playing so much when I was a kid. And that was the one that, even though there's a lot of them out there, it was just one that I hadn't come across. And I finally got one maybe a month ago. And it hadn't made it to my game room yet, but it was out in my garage, and I lit a cigar, and I had a beer, and I was just it was about to be night, and the sun was setting, and I had the garage door open, smoking that cigar with the game sounds playing, and it just brought back so many memories. It was perfect.
You've arrived.
Yeah, I know.
You talk about game sounds because when I was a kid, like arcades were everywhere, and they just popped up all over the place. My dad always taking me to arcades was like that was just something. He didn't play very many games, but just that he took me to all these arcades. So whenever I hear like a cacophony of old sounds like Donkey Kong and the jumpings, anything like that, just takes me back to being like 8, 10 years old.
Wow. This is pretty goofy, but sometimes I'll just turn on all my games and just go down to my basement and just stand there in awe and go, I cannot believe that I have this.
Oh my God, that's such a great, because like as a kid that would be your fantasy. And it's funny, famously Steven Spielberg is a huge arcade gamer. You should have him on your show. Steven Spielberg, he's made Jaws, Schindler's List. It's wow. It's still a flurry of activity here at Interact in Pasadena, as DVDs are. I feel like I'm gonna have to put some of this stuff behind the counter so I can get the DVDs that I want. But anyways, I did happen to see Spielberg's little arcade space at his offices when I got a tour once, and it's amazing. It's basically like if James Bond or a secret agent had a room filled with game machines. That's what it looked like. It was really awesome. So all right, back to Gameroom Junkies. For me, I have two specific experiences. One, I'm not an RPG gamer at all, in the least. But I played this for the Super NES. It was Earthbound, and the music in those games. There's something about music that Nintendo creates. It's like, I want you to write a song that's 7 seconds long that you can hear over and over again for hours, but you'll still like it.
Yes.
And that's all of the music for all the Super Nintendo games. They're so good at that. Like, dude, you don't get bored with it. And some of the games, like Pilot Wings, it's like you're at a spa. It's so relaxing. I'll put Pilot Wings on.
There's CDs that people make that are just all these songs.
I have CDs of game music. I have bought that. I have Intellivision's greatest hits. So Earthbound was one of those when I got to the end of the game, because it was like 100 hours of gameplay. I mean, I played it for months. And I remember sitting there just getting like all choked up at the end. I mean, it's like, it's all about friendship. It's one of those like all the themes that are in every RPG where people sort of follow each other like a human centipede in a way. And they sort of like these little bulbous things. The other thing is, my son, I would play video games with my son. And, when he was young, and I would always let him win. I always let him win. Helped build up his confidence.
Yeah.
Oh, you got me. Then it got to a point where he could beat me. And it was on. And it was frustrating. The only games I could ever beat my son at were sports games because I knew the rules better than he did. But once his reflexes got there and he understood gaming, it's amazing to see him do that. So then, now it's to the point where it's just like, I can't beat this game. Could you finish the final level of Arkham Asylum for me? And he actually finished for me because I couldn't beat it. We were kind of playing it together because after a while, it's like these games become like experiences. I would sit down and watch him play a game and be as into it as he was, and we'd switch the controller back and forth. It was the original BioShock. And I remember watching it with him, and he played it and beat it, didn't need my help, and it was sort of like, wow, my son has grown up. And I'm all welling up, like, because the end of that game is very emotional. Like, I don't know if you have seen the video on BioShock, the first one. It's an amazing game. It is like a film experience. Mm-hmm. So, that got me choked up. That and Earthbound.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead, make fun of me.
No.
If I was at the arcade, you'd be teasing me. Gore, I heard you cried when you play Earthbound.
My daughter plays the Nintendo Wii. She's 7 years old and plays the game Rabbids. Have you seen that?
Right, and Rabbids. Raving Rabbids, right? Is that
yeah.
It's a
I'm
great
not
game.
sentimental yet, but when she gets older, I can imagine me seeing that game because right now she's at the age where she's like, Dad, can you beat this level for me? And so I'm
prepare for that to
big,
end in about 3 years.
Dad, and oh man, that'll get me.
It's going to end in 3 years. In 3 years, you're going to be handing the controller the other way. Yes, could you beat this for me? I've had to do it. It's embarrassing. I just, but I am more of a shooter guy. I do like to sort of like, I'll get into a thing where it's just like shooter, boom. Because they're so like get in, get out. And I like those Xbox Live Arcade games because they remind me of the arcade games that I used to play. I mean, I download those pretty much anything they make.
Well, speaking of arcades, there's been a rise in arcades, a rebirth in arcades in this country, and we've been around the country on business a couple of times and have been to quite a few really good ones where now it's arcades for adults, where guys like us who grew up in the 80s get to go in there and play and drink.
Yes,
when
we couldn't.
Some of those?
There's a Dave and Buster's right in Marietta, about 20 minutes away.
Yeah,
we got a ton of those.
I mean, Dave & Buster's has some of that element. You know, you're playing for I need 1,700 tickets to get this clock.
When you do the math in your head, it worked out to be, I just spent $200 for a toaster.
Right, exactly.
But no, the ones that are just, they wrap their arms around this culture of the people that grew up playing these games. Like there's barcades in Philly and Brooklyn and those places. What do you think is causing the rise of that?
It's because we have money now. It's the same reason. It's the same reason you have an arcade in your basement. It's like we have money. It's something we finally remember when we were kids, and you can own it. I mean, even if you can't get an arcade, you can at the very least download your favorite games. I mean, I have a whole folder on my iPhone that's just classic games. Mm-hmm. That's all it is. It's just called Classics, and it's just downloads of my favorite old school games. Sometimes I just like to hear it. Like I was saying, like that, the Nintendo music, 7 seconds, set it on repeat, and it never gets boring.
You ever drive with that on? Like, you feel like you have to get somewhere first?
No, but speaking of driving, there's certain games that I will not play if I'm about to get in the car. And
the first driver for PlayStation was one that I had a lot of problems with, hopping in a car after playing that for 8 hours.
Grand Theft Auto, don't play that and then go or even like you mentioned Road Rash,
Crazy Taxi? No, you do not want to get in the car.
I love Crazy Taxi. Yeah. It's like after you do that and then you can't drive. You got to.
I can't drive over the curb? What the hell?
Yeah, exactly. It's weird, but I think it's just because now we can afford it and it's coming home.
But it's good to see because they've just been disappearing for so long, and now it's becoming just accepted. And there's actually, you're from Atlanta. There's a game bar opening up.
Battle and Brew. There's a Battle and Brew in Marietta also.
There's another one that just opened up maybe this week called Joystick Game Bar. It's down near the King Center.
Okay.
And it's just
There's one in LA I know about. All they do are classic games. They don't have any. It's all classic games. And what's cool is when you go there and get drinks, they give you all of your change in quarters. So it's like if you go there and it's like, you get your drink, they're only giving you quarters back. So you're like, well, it's in my pocket. Why do I need this? I have been. I gotta forget. It's on Vine or Western. I'll let you guys know. But that one is great.
Does it do a pretty good business?
It's great. It's also like you can get cheap beer there, which I happen to like. Right. Cheap beer and arcade games and plenty of quarters in your pocket. There's nothing better. Yeah.
Because they don't let you get so drunk at Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, right.
Although that is an attraction of Chuck E. Cheese. And the pizza's not that bad if you just go for the cheese pizza.
We can give it a bad rap, yeah.
Give it a bad rap. And I would love, when my kids were at the age where they cared about going to that kind of place, it was like, yeah, we can go. I'll take the kids there because I knew that you could get cheap pitchers of beer. That was what was so fun about going to Chuck E. Cheese. Like, a cheap pitcher of beer, and I'm watching the kids. I'm being a responsible dad. Well, that's it for this week's show. I really want to thank Preston Burt and Patrick Wall from Gameroom Junkies. Those guys were great. You can check out their more about them and their show at GameroomJunkies.com. You can also follow them on Twitter at Gameroom Junkies. And also Shane Mackey, if you're listening to this, you don't have a Twitter. You got to get on this whole social media thing. It's really great to promote your comedy. So I think you should grab at Harry Coinslot if you can. I think that'd be a great Twitter handle for you. You need to just something. I will tweet once Shane joins the social media specter. I will tweet out and I will encourage you all to follow him because his stand-up comedy is hilarious. So those guys were great. Really want to thank them. A great conversation about all things gaming, and also want to thank you, the listeners. Last week's show was a really rough one for me, and I got a lot of words of support via email and via Twitter. I was on a show called Mental Illness Happy Hour, and a lot of you hit me up via email where you can ask questions, which I will address on the show. You can email podcrashwiththatchrisgore@gmail.com, and I will respond to your questions here on the show. A lot of you hit me up for the free book. I gave out a free book if you emailed me. So listen to that show, Mental Illness Happy Hour is our last episode, and I will address your questions, comments, things that you post on iTunes. It really does help people discover the show. If you post a review on iTunes and you post a comment, that helps us out. Also, follow me at that Chris Gore. Follow the show at PodCRASH Show. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/PodCRASH. And you notice we've been putting up these really fun videos on YouTube. You've got to check those out. Go to youtube.com/PodCRASH-TV. You'll be seeing videos from the 2012 PodCRASH Awards. Email me. I will be responding to your questions next week. And one final thing. Let's get out of here.
We're locked into the moon's gravitational pull. What do we do? We die.
If you're still listening to this, you're probably a lot like me. You're the kind of person who buys a lot of DVDs. Actually, you probably have a shelf filled with DVDs. And you have that shelf filled with DVDs, and then you have like a bunch of DVDs that are still wrapped in plastic. That's me. If you ever bought a DVD twice, so you have a DVD that's a favorite one, then you've actually bought it a second time. Maybe it's a different edition of that DVD. Maybe that's why you actually bought it a second time. I'm trying to explain myself, actually. Okay, if you've done that, if you've played a video game to the end, so you can see that end and see basically what happens at the end of the game, and looked past the credits, like on Halo 3, which is a great after the credits thing. It's awesome. Then you and I are a lot alike, and I like you, and for that you shall be rewarded. Send a self-addressed stamped envelope to PodCRASH with that Chris Gore, 5042 Wilshire Boulevard, PMB 1500, Los Angeles, California 90036. You will be rewarded with a surprise. Later, plenty of video games based on science fiction properties. That's sort of an easy match. You know, the person who would be into a science fiction movie would also be into a science fiction version of that game, right? You rarely see, you touched on it, comedies, video games based on comedies. That's actually a funny thing. Where is my Stripes video game? Yeah. Where is my National Lampoon's Animal House, the video game?
Yeah, Animal House I would play for hours.
That would be awesome.
For Otis and the Knights on the soundtrack, I would just play that over and over.
It's basically like Sim Life, but at a fraternity.